Ooh, I got those vibes on high.
An open microphone can be dangerous. Let's tune in on two of the greatest.
The Noble Cause podcast is an expression of life's learnings. I'll be your host, Michelle Cardocas Harrison, and I invite you to connect with me as we explore a plethora of interesting subjects, such as psychology, stoicism, physics, alchemy, health, fitness, and practical tools for the seeking mind, body, and soul. Join me and other special guests on this journey to educate, to inspire, to encourage, and to turn any experience into a noble cause. Welcome to the Noble Cause podcast. I have my beautiful friend Nikki Gillespie here. Nikki is a rolfer, which is a type of body talk, correct?
It's a type of structural integration, and it was created by Ida Rolf. That's where the name came from.
Interesting.
And it's been around for 40 years, at least. And I'm also a somatic coach and do Hakomi, which is body-centered psychotherapy. So they kind of all work together, those three modalities, in the office and in the session with somebody, looking at patterns, emotional patterns and physical patterns that we developed as children, that are, quote unquote armor that protected us and served a purpose, but may be keeping us and limiting us from stepping into something we want to create. So whether that's in relationship to self or relationship with other or job or whatever, we develop these patterns and they come up in our soma, which is our body. So everything that's ever happened to us is actually in our tissue. And we say the issue is in the tissue.
Ah, it's very interesting. So do you know whenever you have a client, do you just kind of intuitively know what you're going to use on them? Or is your practice a mixture of all those techniques?
It's a mixture of all those techniques. I'm beginning to be a little more explicit about what it is that I do because it's now more integrated in me and the way it's expressing itself in my office. But there was it's been a process getting there. And because most people don't know what any of those things are, because none of them are mainstream. Mm-hmm. And the more I've embodied those practices within myself and done my own work within me, now I'm getting to the point where I'm able to articulate it and be more explicit about what it is I'm offering, because it really is amazing work. It really is helpful, and especially for those people that are feeling stuck or lost or confused, grief-stricken. It's helpful during transitions like retirement, divorce, having babies, becoming a parent, that loss of identity, pain in the body, like any of those things. It's really a helpful tool of self-exploration. Basically, we just get really curious about how you do it. Instead of your unconscious running things and making decisions, you actually get to take over the control board and be like, okay, I may need that armor when I go to a family reunion, so I'm going to put that on. But I don't need that armor when I'm going out on this first date with this person that I really want to create something with. So it's just getting to know yourself and how powerful the language of the body is.
That's very cool. I know that I had one session with you once upon a time, and it was like nothing I had ever experienced for sure. I didn't expect to just be bawling the entire time, but I guess that's what I needed to do at that point in time. You probably get that a lot though, it seems like, whenever people are able to relax enough to just kind of let go.
Yeah, and I do a lot of work with the nervous system, and building resiliency and helping people tap into their own resiliency. And when I said the issues are in the tissues, that's exactly it. It's sometimes it comes in the form of anger because people haven't been allowed to be angry, especially women in our old paradigm. And a lot of times, and men aren't allowed to cry.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times when the nervous system slows down enough and people actually drop into their bodies, you realize that everything's about movement. Like, it's not about bad stuff not happening to us. It's not about preventing pain or trauma. It's about developing a relationship with those things. And the more we develop a relationship with those things, we can build a foundation of resiliency where we're able to bounce back and we're able to, like, still have hope and have movement. So those emotional experiences that are in our bodies can actually move through, and they usually move through in the form of tears. Sometimes they move through in anger, and that could be like just simple things like if you put your hands up against mine, and sometimes people just need to experience like pushing against something. You know, like, this is okay to have a boundary, and this is okay to push against something. And some people don't feel that. They don't feel like they can, you know, expand and fill up who they are. They're what I like to call their super suit. Like, you know, we're each given a super suit, and can we fill it up? You know, can we fill up our super suit? Can we authentically walk in the world of who we be, who we are as individuals?
Well, I think that that's so, like, powerful too, because so many times we're either led to believe by society, or maybe we haven't learned really how to move through things. We want to go above them or below them, but we really, the only way is to go through things, and it's okay to be in that uncomfortable spot, and it's okay to really not have it all figured out. But we're so, like, in society, we just want things done right now. We want the answer right now, and it's just not about that. That's not how growth works. You know, it is definitely a process. So that's really interesting. I have a couple questions for you. I have 3 questions I want to start off with. So, will you tell me one thing that you love to do and why, one thing you love about life, and one thing you love about yourself?
Wow, those are good, big questions.
I know, right?
What was the first one again?
So, one thing that you love to do.
One thing I love to do that unfortunately I'm unable to do right now is I love to run. I love to run in the mountains. I love to trail run. I just have this, like, when I am able to run in the mountains. It used to be growing up I was running away from shit because it was part of the avoidance. And that was my conditioned tendency, was to, you know, run away. But when I became more conscious, and not that I still have a long ways to go there, but I'm now at a point where I'm not running away from anything or actually towards anything. It's just like more present in the run, in nature, in that relationship to the ground and the earth on the dirt, and feeling her buoyancy, and you know, actually like feel like I'm becoming one with the mountain when I'm running, and looking out, I mean, at the beautiful place where we live, you know, and where we have access to these beautiful places, and just, it's just so awe-inspiring, and there's no judgment out there.
Very free.
It's very free.
Hell yeah, it's badass.
Yeah.
For sure. So what's one thing that you love about life, just about this existence on this planet?
Oh my God. You know what I love about life? I love a lot of the stuff most people try to avoid. I love blood and guts, and I love messiness, and I love humanness, and I love authenticity. I love it when people can be in the glory of their own mess. And I'm a doula as well, so I go to births. Yeah. And, you know, birth is very scary for a lot of people, and uncertainty and messy, and it's all about coming undone. And it's actually the best metaphor for life, because life will bring on contractions, and you can choose whether you want to surrender to that or resist, and the more you resist, the more painful the contraction is. And so yeah, I like darkness, which is also not very popular in our culture.
Has to be embraced, though, you know, like, I love that too, like, just rawness, you know, like, don't show me what you want me to see, you know, like I want to see all of you. And then that's where it comes from, understanding too. Like, and that's where compassion comes from. Like, it all comes full circle with all of that. But you have to understand, like, I don't care that you're a shitty person. I care, like, what happened to you, or like why, what's going on with you, so that I can understand you, so that I can, you know, just get you a little bit more. But a lot of people don't even know themselves enough to be able to express that. So I could see that being tricky.
Well, and our society doesn't support that. Our society supports you having it all together. And I'm really hoping we're, and like your podcast and other things can really start to help that tide kind of shift, where people aren't so afraid to be authentic and not so afraid to be seen in their quote-unquote failures, because I don't believe it's failure. I believe it's just like life. And it's just like, no, we don't know how to do something right off the bat, like marriage. Like, so, you know, we're going to fall down and we get to pick ourselves back up. And I just, like, I really appreciate transparency, especially on social media. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen sometimes, where people really speak into an experience that our society would label as failure or messy or hanging out your dirty laundry. And someone speaks into what they learned from that and the vulnerability in that. And it's actually so powerful. And when you can read one of those messages on social media and this person's allowing themselves to be seen in their vulnerability and in their messiness, it gives everyone else permission. It gives everyone else, it boosts everyone up, like, oh, I am worthy. There isn't anything wrong with me. Look, this person, like, had that experience. I have that. I'm having that experience too. And I really feel like the importance of that, if we really want to affect, like, the suicide rate is off the charts. Like, if we really want to not have that, it's about love and acceptance of, like, love people even when they're effing up.
Just 1 second. Take that dog. Marley, take this dog outside, please. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with you. And I think that things are changing. I think people are coming out of the woodwork. Like, I feel that there is, I mean, me personally, I feel a calling that it's like, show your freaking heart. Just show it. Like, you don't have to have everything figured out, but having the courage to do that. But I think it also comes, like, you have to be in a certain place to be able, you have to kind of come full circle with things. I wanted to tell my story or have my message for my entire life, but it's like, whenever you're in the mix of it, you don't see the end of it. So you're like, how the hell am I going to really, like, say anything impactful to anybody whenever I'm still figuring this shit out? You know, but then there comes a time to where it's like, you're not supposed to have it all figured out. You can just speak from the wisdom that you have gained. But a lot of this, I think that most of this comes from having a very deep rooted sense of self-confidence, to where, like, almost, and that's where the failure comes in too. It's like, whenever you've put yourself out over and over again and you've experienced ridicule and you've experienced judgment and you've experienced all these things, you've lost relationships, or relationships have evolved in some way, it really gives you that resilience, like you're talking about, that grit, to where it's like, yes, things are going to change. Yes, the people that don't get me aren't going to get me. And that's okay, because first of all, I'm not doing it to please anybody. You know, I'm doing it because this is my true authentic self, and it means a lot to me. And people are so scared of just, like, doing what they're so passionate about, and they are scared of the judgment, and they are scared of the ridicule. But when you come from a place of just, like, I'm going to do it anyways, and I'm going to, like, what matters most is what I think about me, not what other people think about me. And it's amazing how that, like, translates through what you're doing. And whenever you're really paranoid and constantly thinking about other people or trying to please them, you kind of bring that out, you know, like, you attract that, and that's what you get. But whenever you come from a very grounded, confident place and speaking your truth, then it's amazing, like, the people that you can reach and the things that do kind of come out of the woodwork. And then it encourages other people to have that passion in their life as well. So it's incredible how we can influence each other. And I absolutely love any type of work that is long-lasting, that's impactful. And I believe that things last forever. You know, we have no idea, even with our children or our relationships, how far reaching it is, you know, like, is it going to be my grandkids that like whatever I did now is going to influence them, you know, and it's fascinating to think about. But that's going to be fun. Okay, so my last question is one thing that you love about yourself.
One thing that I love about myself is I really do have a wide breadth of acceptance for all people. Like, I mean, it's not that I don't have judgments in there. As I get older and I mature, they're becoming more observations than judgments. But there is a way that I can really chameleon and connect with all walks of life. Like, and I love that. Like, I've done lots of traveling around the world. I've, you know, definitely had my, poor years. And, you know, and all of those experiences in my life have built character in, like, and, you know, just people are amazing. I just love people. They're interesting, you know, and fascinating. And, you know, I find if I do have a judgment towards somebody, like, oh, they think like this, and then when we drop into, like, conversation, they totally blow my mind. And I love having my mind blown like that, and someone surprising me, and I'm like, oh, wow, that is so cool. I would have had no idea had I not taken the time to connect with this person. And so I feel like I connect pretty easily when I want to. I can also, you know, have my own patterns of shut down and run away and all of that too, which those can get triggered. But for the most part, I feel like I can walk into a room and
Connect with anybody. That's very, like, powerful, like being a bridge. And I can totally relate to that. It's like, I experienced this a lot in a lot of nonprofit organizations, or maybe even like an alternative education, or where say you have at-risk youth or what have you. And it seems like there's such a disconnect between the people that are trying to help and the people that are needing the help. And it's like you never understand what it's like in that world, and that you need somebody to bridge that, to say, I've been there, but I've been on the other side. You know, and I can see that in your work. Like, I feel like that's totally in my work too, and it's the best, you know, like, just to be able to, because I feel like a lot of people don't make it to the other side, they kind of stay there. So it's awesome to be able to have that opportunity. Do you feel like you chose this line of work, or that it chose you?
I definitely feel like it chose me. I mean, the opening way back, you know, I went to college and majored in forestry.
Wow.
Because I fought fires in the summertime, and that's what all my friends were doing. So it was natural to, like, you know, during the school year to just go with the flow, and I didn't know what else I would do, because I actually was going to school to run. That's all I really cared about, was running. But then when that was over, I was lost, and I actually had no idea who I was and didn't care about forestry at all. And realized, like, I needed to find something. And it was a series of events just kind of landing in my lap. Like, I ran into, like, 2 different people at 2 different times who didn't even know each other, that had attended massage school in Colorado Springs. And same school. And one person I had grown up with, another person was a sister of a friend of mine. And it was within a month's time. And I just listened to that. I was like, oh, and it just, like, something lit up in me. I was like, wait, that's the next move. And it kind of just has been like that. It's like something will just happen where it's just like, oh, this is, you know, an arrow. It looks like an arrow. And it's like, oh, no, go this way. Oh, no, go this way. Oh, okay, go this way. And it's just, what I've learned is how to listen. Like, it's really about, like, dropping in and listening to what's next. And sometimes it doesn't look like how I think it's going to look. And I just trust it anyway, and it ends up working out. So, yeah, I do think most work for people is a calling if they're listening. Now, if you're working out of scarcity, or you're working out of, like, because my parents told me they wanted me to become said thing, or my ego says I need to make this much money, then, you know, I don't think that's necessarily listening to the call. Not to say that people aren't called to be stockbrokers or something like that. Like, that's totally valid, but yeah.
Were you worried about money whenever you started on this path, or was it not in the forefront of your mind?
I think, you know, just culturally, there's always an element of worrying about money. I think I also grew up pretty simple, that I don't need a lot, and I know how to scrap, and I know how to get by. So I really have a good survival instinct, so that was never necessarily a thing. When I got divorced from my kid's dad, definitely that was like, oh, you know, that's a little bit of a, how are we going to do this? And it was just motivation to put all my gifts on the table and be like, okay, this is what I got.
Go.
And like throw it out there shamelessly. Like, all right, here's what I got to offer. Who wants to give me some money for this?
It's amazing how it comes back, though, whenever you're like, I feel like the universe supports you so much whenever you take that leap. It's you that's like second guessing yourself. Yeah. You know? What, if any, sacrifices did you have to make to be able to do what you do?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I would say, looking back, and this is a struggle, and maybe a struggle for all moms. You know, I've never been a helicopter mom. It's just never been. I've always there's always been this knowing that my kids are their own beings. Even though, of course, I believe children pick their parents, but I've never felt like ownership over them. I've felt like my job is to guide them, love them, keep them safe. And they have their own karmic unfolding that they get to walk in this life, and it may look very different than what I have in mind.
It's true.
And so I've always kind of felt that way, and a lot of my studies have taken me out of the home, and you know, it's what little pings I have on my heart are the times I look back and I wasn't with my kids. You know, like, you know, whether I was off at a workshop for a weekend, or going to school in Boulder for a month at a time, and like, it was great. The universe really supported that financially and with care of the kids to be with their dad, and there was a lot of things that it was fluid, and I also have a little, ouch, like I missed that basketball game, like, ow, and kids tend to like really want to highlight the one you missed, not the 10 you made.
Right. Yep, it's true.
And so I and at the same time, it's very different than the way I grew up. Like, they've gotten way more than I ever did. And so my gauge is a little different than other people's. As far as like, I do believe like kids can figure stuff out. And they can learn how to adapt. And like, it's like our whole story of like, the divorce rate is 60% in our culture. And it's like, if you're going to subscribe to the story that they come from a broken home,
right,
and that's the story we're giving kids, you're not helping them. But if you give them the story of, look at you adapt, look at you be resilient, and not validate sadness or loss or grief, definitely validate those things, because that's real when a family decides to do it differently. And let's change our wording.
Oh yeah.
Like don't stick that energy on that.
Yeah. Well, and being supportive of non-traditional families, like I would love to see it be okay for married people to take breaks, for people to not feel obligated to be married, for people to have children together without having to have, you know, a romantic relationship. Like all of these things are okay just because they're not in society.
Yep.
And it's tricky because I see it with children too, to where, you know, I grew up with a broken home, and it was such a big deal. You know, it was the 80s and early 90s, and I was in counseling, and it was just such a big freaking deal. And now, not only is it normalized, but then it's like, then we could just kind of lost talking about it too, you know? And so I feel like it's important to, like you said, like honor it, but also, be okay with it, you know, like everything's gonna be okay. And yes, it's confusing. And of course we need to feel all of our feels all the time for sure. But, there's something about doing something because society is okay with it as opposed to what's really okay with you. And I think the most important thing is that children have happy parents. The most important thing. And I'll hear my children say that. They will even say, I'm okay with whatever as long as you guys are happy, or as long as, you know, and they crave that so much more. And I also have to remember, in history, parents weren't even connected with their children like they are now. You know, they never even had an actual relationship. You know, it was like the kids were, get out of here, you know, like go play. So like the fact that we are that much more connected says something. And then even caring about the sacrifices that you've made. And as a mother, I think that you can never win, whether you're at home all the time or whether you're working all the time or whether you're trying to wear multiple hats. But that ultimately, like, you being a healthy mom matters the most, you know, and then that's going to have the most impact on your children for sure. And fathers too, you know, I mean, it goes both ways. But I think that's important, and I see that changing for sure. You know, I see like the kids that we've raised and seeing how they are coming up, and it's like, wow, things have changed a lot. So how do you preserve or protect yourself with the type of energy that you're doing? I hear a lot about empaths, and I've done some studies on it as well. But I hear it all the time, and I think it's like so fluffy. People almost, they use it as an excuse to like be jagged and hurt and confused all the time instead of really taking their power back. So do you have any like tips or pointers for people that feel like they might be exposed a lot to other energies, and how to preserve your own energy and protect yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I can just share what works for me. What I love about my work is it forces me to stay healthy and do my work. Because if I'm not, that's when I'll get hit in my office. So, I mean, that involves nutrition and exercise and healthy play in nature. My spiritual work is huge, piece of my life, and I probably wouldn't be here without it. And so that's a big part of my life. Family time. So all of those, you know, good high vibrational things, I try to stay surrounded by high vibrational people. You know, I have healthy boundaries with my clients and other people I work with. And, you know, there's a couple tricks I do. I prepare my room. My room's very, I take 30 minutes to prepare my room before the day starts. And calling in my helpers and, you know, Teflon over me. So nothing goes on me. Because really in my office, it's not me. Like Nikki has learned the skills. And so the energy comes through me and through my hands. And sometimes I hear it. So I hear it auditory and sometimes visually and kinesthetically. So those are like the three ways I listen. Kinesthetically is definitely the strongest. So using my hands. And so those are continually to be refined as I go. Every once in a while I have gotten hit. And, but I have, you know, some great tools to clean myself off. And I have some great mentors in my life that also I've had to call. And they've helped me do that. So, yeah, I mean, that definitely, like, I think it's part of the package. you're going to be knocked down sometimes.
Right. But I'm sure that it teaches you deeper levels of yourself, right? To where you can understand more about
it's
you.
taught me how to like recognize more, like, because I've actually had entities attach themselves to me, and and then not understanding why I feel so exhausted and I feel so low, or I'm dragging ass and I'm like, what's going on, and then I've had my mentors like clue me in, like, yeah, did you check in with this? And then I'm like, oh. So now I'm beginning to recognize more, to like take my own physical signals as like, wait a minute, this isn't a normal day. This isn't,
not you.
This isn't me. And check in with that and clean myself off. But basically, clean's like my word. Like trying to be as clean as possible energetically in my communications with other people. Trying to be accountable and responsible with my actions and what I'm bringing to the table or the room. Like, and just and have healthy boundaries. If I know I'm in a funky space, not to go like project that on or bring it to, a group. So.
Yeah, it seems like the more you put yourself out there, the more you have a responsibility. You know? So, like, yes, I'm here for other people, but that means that I have to first be here for me. And everything comes from there, and like we talk about in society, it's like, I experienced this whenever I first started to learn how to love myself. It felt very unnatural. It felt bad. It felt like I was being vain, or that I, was doing something wrong, and I think it starts that way, and then you really learn to get to know yourself a little bit better and honor yourself and love yourself. And then for me, it was like I became so like proud and protective of myself that I was like, I'm not going to let all of this shit weigh me down. Like, I love myself enough to set those boundaries, to say, no. Like, I love me. It's like how you take care of your best friend or your children. You got to take care of yourself the exact same way.
Absolutely.
Because things seep in very easily, and things that are not you, and I see that a lot, to where there's so many things that, like, externally that we focus on or that influence us. And I know for me mentally, like, any anxiety or depression is thinking about something outside of me, something outside of my control, and then once I'm able to just like stop and think about me, and I ask myself this all the time, I say, but what about you? What about you? And then I go from there and I say, okay, well, I am this, and then I pronounce those things that I am, and then all of a sudden I feel better about the world, because I'm reminding where I am and where I stop and where something else begins.
Absolutely. That's, that autonomy, I believe, is like such an important piece. And it's interesting because that's what I do in my office when I'm working the physical part on the body, is like what we call the sleeve. So it's like the way we present to the outside world, like our super suit, what the outside world sees is our sleeve. And our society puts so much into the sleeve. And not enough into the core. So it's the relationship between the core and the sleeve. And the more congruent those two can be with each other, the more ninja you can be. And that's really, I don't know, right now, from my perspective, like, my goal is to, like, how in alignment, how congruent can I get my core and sleeve to be operating together. So really everything's coming from my core. I mean, and if you look at martial artists and real ninjas, Bruce Lee, and like, they are able to do that because they're all coming from their core, not the sleeve. You can see someone that's all pumped up, literally physically pumped up, and they have no core. Yeah, or they have no agility or speed or power. It's
like,
all
it's
in the sleeve. It's all in the sleeve.
Well,
and our society rewards the sleeve. I mean, look at Instagram and like look at me in my bikini and look at me in my, like, we're all about the sleeve. We're all about how things look like on the outside.
It's so true, and that's so interesting. So, Nikki recently started doing CrossFit with me as well, and there's actually a concept in the methodology about CrossFit is that everything comes from the core, meaning that we're from our strongest parts of our body is out to our weaker extremities. So every time that you are able to, you don't do a clean and jerk just from your puny little hand, your puny little arms, because they will always be inferior to your legs and to your core, you know, and to your hips and to those like stronger muscles. And it's incredible how that can transfer over into how you deal with your life and how you deal with relationships. You know, it's like use your strongest thing. And what comes to mind is like, if you have developed compassion, like that's a really strong core thing to come off of. Yeah. Because everything else comes from that. But if you're using maybe a weaker mentality, you know, to where you're coming from fear or you're coming from jealousy or any of those like low vibrational attitudes or mindsets, then it only gets you so far. You're not lifting the weight of life with your strongest character and your strongest values and your strongest virtues. You know, and I believe that moving forward, especially how things are changing with religion and with society, that our most important core thing that we need to focus on is how we express our values and how we are reminded of our values, because it's kind of gotten lost. And I think it's very important that we have those without the stigma of religion or without anything like that, you know? And it's like it all ties together. It's fascinating to think of things that way.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think that autonomy comes from knowing your own values, like what is in alignment with you versus the values that were given to you as a kid may not be in alignment with who you are.
Right.
And also our tolerance of other people's values.
Yes.
I mean, some people value privacy, where other people value living in community, and you know. And if we can get more, the more we move out of this right, wrong, black or white thing and kind of move into a place of middle of the road tolerance. Like I love Rumi's quote. What is it? There's a field beyond right and wrong, and I'll meet you there. You know, and I love that, because it's just like, like I don't want to be around a bunch of people that think like me.
Right. Right. Well, and some people haven't been taught certain things either, you know, like I'm very blessed to have been raised by a long lineage of Foursquare pastors. So I feel like the values of love and forgiveness and loyalty and being able to not necessarily like self-sacrifice, but being able to endure a certain amount of hardship for the greater good. And then I see people that didn't learn those things growing up, you know, and as much as I want to judge them and be like, you're a shitty person, I have to realize, well, maybe nobody ever taught them this or showed them this. Absolutely. And so then that's where it comes back to the autonomy, to where regardless of how they are or how they grew up, it's my job, because I do have those values. It's my job to show and to lead by example, because this whole thing is about example. It's not there's so many opinions out there, and everybody's telling you what to do and what to think. But at the end of the day, like, you inspire people by your actions and by your examples. And the only way that you're healthy enough to be like that is if you are able to take care of yourself so that you can be that example. You know, it doesn't come from pointing your finger. I just see so pointing your finger and this, you should be this way and you should be that way. And it's like, that is not how you change the world. And you don't change the world by pushing up against what you don't want. You change the world by creating the world that you want to see. And we need to spend more time creating that world, because from changing from one to the other, we have to have somewhere to go, you know? And I find myself, one of the reasons why I even started this podcast or writing my book or everything that I'm doing is that I am creating a space for myself that will be there for me whenever I need it, you know, and then through that, it will be available to other people as well. Absolutely. You know, we have to continuously progress to where we are creating that space.
And that's awesome, because, I mean, you doing this podcast and writing the book, I mean, because I really do believe in that is so healing. I know it is from my own experience when I read someone's story, when I listen to a podcast, when I watch something on TV, like a documentary or something about someone sharing their gift, sharing their story, I am like touched, inspired to share mine, you know, and find mine. You know, I mean, the biggest thing is like realizing you have one and more than one. And then finding it, refining it, and then sharing it. That's our contribution.
And it does. It's like this just spiral effect, you know, that I feel the same way. And one of the reasons why, like, I am so moved, I listen to certain audios, podcasts, or whatever, and it just moves me so much. And it's like, that's what it's all about. And then it inspires me to give, and then I can, and it's just this like total domino effect,
Yeah.
And like, that's how you change the world.
Yeah.
It's by you and your example.
Yeah.
It's very powerful. I love it. I think it's like something that should be embraced, because you never get it by just telling people how to live their life. And I honestly, like, I can't really stand that. Like, it's not, and I can't tell you how to live your life either, because you're a completely different person than me. Like, I can listen to you and we can connect, but at the end of the day, like, you got to find out what works for you, and it might be totally different than what works for me. But then that's what's good, from having so many different people from different walks of life expressing their true self, because then you can take a little bit from here and take a little bit from there, and that resonates with me, and that definitely doesn't resonate with me, so it's cool that we're able to do that for sure.
Yeah, and I think that autonomy also brings, as I'm growing up and becoming more of an adult, is celebrating people, celebrating others, like celebrating with them, not like a celebration means that I'm not enough or I didn't do said thing, like I know I get to celebrate you and this podcast and this journey that you walk, and and every day when we whoever we're with in the workplace or at the gym or wherever it is, we get to celebrate those other people's successes and the energy that brings when everyone can be in that place of lifting each other up.
Yeah.
Instead of this like old paradigm of tearing each other down. Yeah. And it's like there's such a difference.
It totally is, and especially like if you're ever lacking that in your life, and it seems like it's you spiral down, and I recognized it in myself whenever I was searching for validation outside of myself, and I was never ever happy, and I was never good enough, and I just had to really flip the script in my mindset and say, you know what, I need to be the one to celebrate my little things, even if it's every single day, whether it's like I went to the gym today, or I spent like present time with my children, or just those little tiny things, like if you don't honor yourself and celebrate yourself, nobody's going to do that for you. But the more that you like operate from there, the more you attract that into your life, and it means the world to me to have somebody see me, and like that's one of the reasons why I love CrossFit, just because of like the energy, and everybody's there for a reason, and it starts off being mental, and then it turns very much into heart, and just having that community. I mean, it's such like a good thing for me, and I love being a part of it. It's powerful. It's good. Powerful. All right, 1 second. She keeps on letting that dog back in. And he's gonna scratch on here. Marley. Yeah. Take him outside and leave him outside, please. Will you grab him? Come here, Ruth. We'll leave him outside, okay? What's your light out there? Yep. All of my episodes are going to have like animals in the background and
it's great.
Kids, and it's real life, I tell you.
It's integrated.
It is. So I have a question that I am dying to ask you.
Yeah.
What is the most common or interesting body ailment that you have experienced, and what is it associated with?
That's interesting. It's like so integrated in how looking at the holistic picture of a human, so like to like kind of dissect it a little bit is a little harder to think about. I think well, right now I'm obsessed with the pelvis, so that's one thing that's coming up right now. But
explain that to me.
Yeah, well, I'm learning and have learned how to do pelvic floor work, which is the pelvic floor. Obviously, that's intimate because it's really close to the genitalia, and it's just interesting to me as a doula because I've actually spent a lot of time in my own pelvis, and there's so much there. I mean, like when I started really diving into the pelvis, like, because I mean, pelvis is just a part of everything, yet in the last 3 months I've been really going there. And it's like when I really started to go there, all of a sudden it was like looking into the pelvis was like looking into space. Like that's how much is there. So it was like, holy moly, like there is a lot here. And I mean, it's like most women haven't even looked at their vaginas, and people get married and they've never even touched themselves. It's like, masturbation has a bad rap. Like all these like taboos around the pelvis, and when I started doing pelvic floor work, it like, it's very potent. So it brings up a lot for people. One, to build that relationship with someone enough to trust and go slow. And
Hi, Jax.
You put something on for me.
Yeah.
Hi, Jax.
Let's put a pin in that one. Hey, Jax. I'm going to have you watch in Mama's room for just a minute, though, okay? We're almost done. This is my friend, Nikki.
Hi.
You say hi? Yeah, let's put it on in here, okay? You want to watch in here or in Mom's room?
What's in here?
Come here. You can watch something in my room. You want to go in my room? Okay. I'll turn something on for you, okay?
He's so cute.
He is so cute. That little boy,
my
I just love him to death.
How old is he?
4. I know, he is darling. Like, oh my gosh. Okay, so pelvic work, the pelvis.
Yeah, the pelvis. Yeah. So anyway, there's just so much to the pelvis. It's where, some people have had a lot of trauma in their pelvis, rape, molestation, not good boundaries, unfortunately, another lacking thing in our culture is good sexual education. So there's a lot of shame around the pelvis. There's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of, there's like abortions and hysterectomies and traumatic birth experiences. And I mean, there's just a lot going on in the pelvis, and we tend to shut it off. We tend to not live down there at all, and if we do, we just keep it for sex, like it's just kind of this really not integrated part of ourselves, and there's so much wisdom there. That's the other thing. So like there's all of that keeps people away from their pelvises, and yet that really is the core. I mean, in other cultures, they actually call the sacrum the seat of the soul.
Wow.
The Latin term for pelvis is basin, and it's just like it holds all our vital organs, Yeah. It's the relationship to our legs, to our thorax, our lower body, to our upper body. I mean, it is just like a really mind-blowing part of the anatomy that is just so unexplored and has such a bad rap in a lot of ways. And speaking of rap, if we can build enough relationship and safety and curiosity and trust to unwrap. That there is like, that's where a lot of those gifts are. A lot of those gifts are in the pelvis, you know, and you have just no idea, because it's like, and that's the darkness I'm talking about, is like when a baby's in the darkness before it is born. I mean, this is where, as women, we die every month in our uterus.
And
you know, we bleed and we shed it, and we also give birth here. So it's like so much going on there.
Yeah, it's incredibly fascinating, for sure. Do you have any clients that struggle with addiction?
That's interesting. I don't know if there's anyone on the planet who doesn't have addiction. I'm addicted to sugar and caffeine.
Yep. Me too. That's about my two favorites. Yep.
And so, yes, probably everyone in my office is definitely addicted to something. But if we're talking about heavier addiction, as far as like drug or alcohol addiction, that's actually an area that I actually don't call in purposely. I grew up around addicts and alcoholism, and I have compassion fatigue when it comes to addiction. Actually,
I could totally see that. Well,
yeah,
because it takes on a different form in that person. It kind of, would you agree? Like it takes away.
They have to choose, and until they actually they can't get to the level. And I don't mean to speak high-low or anything like that. It's just like on a spectrum. It's like, in order to do the level of work where I go in my office with someone, of where they go, you have to have a level of support outside of my office to hold you in that work, because we're deeply unfolding the core of who you are. And that can be very vulnerable and unstable feeling at times. And so you need something very supportive on the outside and, you know, to be supporting that process. And someone who's usually in that place of addiction, one, doesn't want to go there. That's why they're addicted to something, because they're absolutely avoiding going there.
Absolutely.
So that's why they don't come into my office, because people come into my office. Sometimes people come somewhat accidentally, but not accidentally. And, you know, and some people come, well, they're not, I get some seekers, I get some people who want to fix it and go away, and I get people who, you know, their relative bought them a session, and then they end up in this beautiful unfoldment process. And some people who come in our office and realize, holy moly, no, I don't want to go here. I'm not ready for this. And then they don't come back, which is fine. You know, I'm not, like, you know, if you're ready or not.
Right.
Like, I'm not here to, one of my principles is, like, nonviolence. Like, I'm all about, like, honoring people's armor. Like, cool, you don't want to go there? Your armor's up? Let's just explore your armor.
Yeah.
Like, let's just explore how that armor served you, and let's take a deep bow to your armor, and let's just check it out, how your armor works, and how many times it saved you.
Yeah, for sure, because you have to honor that. I heard this quote the other day that, like with disappointment, it's like broken glass, you know, or the same thing like with learning these survival mechanisms. It's like you have to recognize it before you can clean it up. Otherwise, it's going to cut you, you know? So it's like honor it for what it is. But there comes a time where it's like, okay, it's time to clean this up or put it away where it's supposed to go. Because you're right, you don't need it. It served you well, you know? And I find that a lot in, like with my childhood. And like, yes, it served me well. Thank God that I made it on the other side. However, I am a grown-ass woman. And I get to choose how I get to interact with things around me in my life. You know, no longer am I under the influence of other people as much, you know? So, like, I totally see how that could make sense.
Yep.
What is your definition of success in life?
I think right now it's a lot of what we're speaking into. It's authenticity. Actually, freedom. Actually, if I was to go all the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the intention I hold in the container in my office. So if you walk into my office, that's what is in there. So usually people's systems, even not consciously, will align to that. Like, so, you know, we can move that in freedom of the body, freedom of a joint, freedom in movement, and freedom in movement in the core, and freedom of the emotions being able to move. But really, for me, overall, in my office and out of my office, my mission, intention, and purpose on this planet is to become free and to help others become free. And that's free of like self-judgment, free of self-hatred, free to dance.
Right.
Like no one's watching, free to sing like no one's listening. You know, and that's why I love watching little kids, you know.
Yeah.
They're so free. I mean, I love watching them on the playground. They're like so free in their bodies and like so free in their little worlds because they have no, you know, inhibitions and filters that we end up collecting as we grow and become adults. And yeah.
I connect with that a lot. Like sometimes whenever I don't know how to think or what to think, I just ask myself, how would it feel if you were just free? You know, like if you just were free without all that stuff. And I've also learned when you free yourself, you free other people too. You know, and that's the only way to get to that is that like I'm the type of person, I'm like a clinger. I'm like, I hold on tight to things that I love because there's fear behind that if I let go, I would either lose them or they wouldn't choose me. But you still have to let go, you know, like it's not fair to that person for you to do that. And then you realize like, it's all a mirror. Like I'm doing that to myself. I'm holding on to myself. There's something within me that says like, if you let go, you know, I know the biggest thing whenever you progress consciously or if you follow your passions or if you take chances, put yourself out there, that there's things in your life that will change. And I had been told or heard that it's like you could lose relationships, and that always scared the shit out of me. I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. You know, like I want to follow my passion, but I don't want to lose everything in my life. And inevitably, as I have progressed, piece by piece by piece, I have. Like, you have to let go of it. And not because it's not meaningful, but because it's heavy. You know, and it's holding you down. And you don't have to, it doesn't have to like be like that, you know, like you have to allow yourself to be free and then let other people be free and just love them for who they are, where they are, and not having to put them in a little box of expectations, because we really stop ourselves and them. Like we're not doing anybody any service whenever we're doing that. So yeah, like cutting the cord of yourself, but then freeing everybody else at the same time. Yeah, it's hard though.
It is hard.
Definitely. So, is there anything else that we didn't go over that you kind of, or like a message you might have for our listeners or for the world at large, or an idea that's bubbling up for you or anything coming through for you?
Yeah, I guess just taking that next step, whatever that is, you know, and it doesn't mean we have to take giant steps. It doesn't mean we have to run. It's just titrating it. It's like, just take the first one. You know, and it may be a dead end, and that's information too.
Right.
So then it means you go the other way.
It's all information.
It's all information. And I guess the one thing I would really leave is be curious. You're not as scary as you think you are.
For sure. Well, that's awesome. And I have to say that I honor you, Nikki, for the work that you do. It takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there. And I think that, like I said, it's just so far reaching. We have no idea. You've helped me personally. And I know that you've helped our community and all of your clients and everybody that you work with. I think that you're a beautiful, powerful woman. I look up to you a lot. And I'm really excited that you're like in my life more. You are actually
Oh.
like, I wanted you to be my very first interview, and you just have been popping into my life more, and I know like you are my sign that it's like we're talking about being around more like high vibe people and stuff. And I've really been trying to bring that into my life, and you have showed up for me in that way, so I appreciate that.
Thanks, Michelle. You're amazing.
Thank you. All right, well, until next time.
Okay.
All right, much love.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for taking the time to tune in to the Noble Cause podcast. It is a great joy and honor to be able to connect with you. If you feel this episode, or if you can think of someone that can benefit from it, share it with them. You could also leave me a review, like the Facebook page The Noble Cause, or hit me up at thenoblecausepodcast@gmail.com. I love connecting with new people, sharing ideas, and keeping the flow of conscious energy so that we may continue to be inspired, interested, and interesting. I hope this transmission has served your highest good, and until next time, much love to my people.